Hi, my name's Charles Greco, and I'm presenting my pitch deck. It's titled Lakers 2020 Podcast Pitch Deck, and this is for sports management entrepreneurship course. So to get started, firstly, I am a sports management major with a concentration in sports law. I graduated in spring 2021. It is imperative for me to understand how the current media landscape operates. Enrolling in media audience courses when I was at NYU Los Angeles studying abroad gave me extra insight into the present social media phenomenon because I want to learn about the daily interactions between media communication technologies and their audiences. I currently have an Instagram account associated with the podcast. I have a Twitter associated with the podcast. I have a Snapchat associated with the podcast. These are all in the links of my video. So I am proactive and I reach to all fans. My ultimate goal is to become a sports agent. And contemporary agents, especially agents involved in professional sports leagues, must learn to distinguish honest media from media created just for hype and clicks. Furthermore, this will help me recognize important narrative trends. So, this is not a hobby, it's what I want to do. But my ultimate goal after this is to become a sports agent. This experience has had me studying agents and contracts and antitrust and all these important things that perhaps the novice might not know in a podcast. So this project is my life, and I'm not doing this something on the side. If I'm a sports agent, I will continue to do this. Similarly, other media moguls or panelists on ESPN, for example, like Jalen Rose, a former NBA basketball player, additionally has a podcast network that he's ran for almost a decade. The problem is that there's a current official Lakers podcast, and it's called Official Lakers Podcast. And firstly, I've never really heard of them prior to actually searching for them. The hosts, not that they're not credible, but they do not have, experience. And it's a lot of conjecture with them. And speculation and rumors and kind of hot takes that aren't really on a professional level, whereas what I do with my podcast called Lakeshow's Finest. There's not a lot of critical analysis, which is what I do. I do a lot of critical analysis in my podcast. Another major issue I've noticed with the official Lakers podcast is that not only do they not post as often and recap every game like I do, but according to right now, their last podcast was in March. And that is, of course, when the season was suspended. That means they didn't cover a single Lakers playoff game, a single finals game, or any of the regular season bubble games, and they didn't cover any of this free agency that's happening right now. That is completely unresponsible, especially if they are going to say that they are the official Lakers podcast through the Podcast One network, and the Lakers have the Lakers organization has given them the okay to have that title. That is irresponsible, unprofessional, and I can't believe it. And I would never do that. And that is what I have to bring, my effort to never let myself not post for months like that and put myself in the dark. The problem is that this needs to be the podcast I'm proposing for the official Lakers podcast, and needs to be innovative, and it needs to change the podcast media landscape. Of course, right now, podcasts are huge. So NBA organizations, most of them do not have an official podcast. A lot of the organizations, some of them do not have official bloggers to recap games. Most of them are picking up on that. But an example is the Memphis Grizzlies. They had a blogger named Chris Vernon, and they asked him to do an official podcast because it wasn't very big at the time, several years ago. This is probably 10 years ago or so. And the NBA organizations without a podcast, they need to start looking at this because this is a niche market. Podcasts are a niche market, but teams having their own official one and where they can reach out and branch out to all their advertisers and all their contributors could be really helpful. There's so many third-party NBA and Laker podcasts right now to compete with. A great Lakers podcast examples is called Lakers Film Room, and it's by this gentleman named Pete Zayas, and he did his podcast so long the Lakers actually hired him to do play-by-play and behind-the-scenes analytics for them. That's how incredible this guy was, and he gained traction because of his consistency doing it for a long time. Another third-party Lakers podcast is from a network called Lakers Nation. They have their own podcast network, and they have the Lakers one. So that is the problem. The solution is my current podcast, Lakeshow's Finest. I've been doing since the podcast has been going on since 2016. I did a blog called Lakeshow's Finest starting in 2013, and I post these podcasts on iTunes, but mostly I post them on YouTube because I want to add video elements, intros and outros. And I want to push this even further because the YouTube channel has been 10 years old, and I have established enough consistency that I need to utilize this channel and already what it has and make it grow even better. The solution is to what I already do, which is consistently recap games and major events. I've noticed on the official Lakers podcast, they probably post a podcast once every week, once every 2 weeks. That's not good enough. You need loyal and committed people, and that's who I am. I already post on YouTube and iTunes. There's some of my podcasts that actually somehow ended up on Stitcher and Spotify and like Podchaser. I'm not sure how, but the solution is to get to even more of those outlets. But the biggest one I would say is YouTube, because not only do I have a little bit of a following, but you can expand on that, right? You don't just need podcasts. You can have, maybe some Kobe video clips and that you really like, and people will like them because they already follow your podcast, stuff like that. The product, once again, it's called Lakeshow's Finest. I do video highlights. I do Kobe montages on YouTube. Unfortunately, when Kobe passed away, I used that as an opportunity to do as much Kobe montages as I can for tributes, and those got a lot of traction. So I kind of create my own thing as well. It's not just about the podcast. I currently do have advertisements through Google and Google AdSense, their monetization program. However, I only have 1,400 subscribers, and unfortunately, the way YouTube works is you make about 10 cents off every 1,000 views. So to put that in perspective, my channel has a total of 800,000 views right now. That's not a lot of money I made, okay? And I'll be honest, probably 30% of those videos are not monetized because they're other content that's not Lakers. So there's that. How I do this podcast, it's pretty not that complex, I guess because I've been doing it for so long. But I watch the game. More recently, I've been posting about the Lakers signings. Like today, they signed Marc Gasol. But what I do is I watch a game, I take notes on it, and then I go to iMovie or Photoshop Pro, and all my recording clip I put in the iMovie. Over the recordings, I have pictures, either from the game or from players or other things. But before I start talking in the podcast, or my YouTube podcast, I guess, I have a montage. And I have about 50 to 100 montages I've done, and I'll rotate them, right? So, for example, I have a LeBron montage. And let's just say LeBron had a great game. So I'll do a montage of maybe LeBron in that game using the highlights, but maybe another montage at the end of the podcast showing off other LeBron highlights. Or my channel is called KB24 Status, and the podcast is Lakeshow's Finest. On iTunes, it's not called KB24 Status. It's just called Lakeshow's Finest. Because it's called KB24 Status, there's a lot of Kobe stuff too. So I have a logo, I have an icon for my channel, like an insignia, I guess. and I put that at the beginning, then a montage, then me talking and pictures, because there'll be video of hearing sounds going over it. Sometimes I'll have some video while I'm talking, but of course it's muted. And then after, I will have another closing montage. And that's essentially how I do it. And then I upload it, of course, to YouTube. I have to export it from iMovie or Adobe Photoshop Pro and upload it to YouTube, and that can take a couple hours. So based on my internet speed, and that's how it gets done. I engage with the audience. So this is a solo venture, but the audience has really, my 1,500 subscribers, they have, I enjoy talking to them. And sometimes their criticism could be constructive or non-constructive. And sometimes it's funny. And I'll either like it or sometimes I'll reply. But mostly I like it, and I do a heart comment, which means that it stands out to the other viewers. Here's an example of a podcast that I recently did. And once again, I want to stress this. The podcasts work better on YouTube because I can see comments, and I can reply to the comments on YouTube. I can't do that on iTunes. An example is I did an Alex Caruso season evaluation, which means that I analyzed how well he did in the 2019-2020 season, and I compare it to last season, and I give my thoughts on the future. I give my thoughts on how he did currently, and for example, the Lakers sign new players, maybe his role diminish or grow. I assumed that Rajon Rondo would leave, so that expands the role for Alex Caruso. So I got a comment saying, why fix something that's not broken? And that's a constructive comment. I thought it's very interesting. He's saying, that's a comment I thought was interesting. Another comment that I did on a Lakers video, which is kind of a generic, a Lakers podcast, which is kind of generic, was someone said, "Oh my God, nice video," and then a like symbol. Okay? And then maybe a non-constructive comment example was from someone named Ryan who said, "LeBron is trash." I'm not going to be, going out of my way to delete those comments. But I just think they're funny, and I'll still like them. And yeah, sometimes there's haters, but that's not a big deal, obviously. I just think, so there's all range of people that are engaging with my podcasts. On social media for the Los Angeles Lakers, their official Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all of the above, has about 30 million followers altogether. And the Lakers, of course, are universally around the world huge. And podcasts have, of course, the element to be downloaded anywhere. Anywhere with Wi-Fi, pretty much. And China loves the Lakers. China loved Kobe. China loves LeBron. So it's more than 30 million, but that's the unofficial social media. So that the market size is huge. It's gigantic. Sports, of course, are huge, but the Lakers are probably the biggest franchise in the NBA in terms of popularity. I guess you could say the Celtics or Knicks, arguably. In terms of professional sports, the big four, the American sports, NHL, NBA, NFL, and MLB, I'd say the Lakers are up there. You got, the Yankees, you got the Dodgers, the Cowboys, so the New York Rangers. So the Lakers are definitely up there. The market is huge. There's other people to reach out to besides all those fans in the market. There's, other companies that I can reach out to for help for advertising. There's other sources besides fans. The business model. So my current business model is, in terms of financials, is the YouTube monetization. And like I said before, I haven't made a lot of money from that. So I need to expand on that. I need to engage other advertisers or get their attention and present, this pitch deck because I need more financials because this is serious. I've been doing this for fun for several years, but now this is legitimate. So that is another element of the business model is execute deals with marketing sports firms. That's really important. This is a solo venture. I've only done this by myself throughout the years. And occasionally, very rarely, I've had a quote-unquote guest, a podcast guest host or something like that. And I need to reach out. Should I execute on securing more advertisers and people to back me? It will help me in order to get maybe some ex-players or players that come on via phone and talk on the podcast, or maybe just other sports experts like capologists, like people that know the NBA cap, people that know salaries behind the scenes, advanced analytics stuff. This is a top-down approach. Like I said, this is solo, and that is the business model. So the underlying magic, I put maximum effort into all of this. That is the magic, just my effort and my consistency and wanting to do this, not feeling like I have to. I do this for free, of course. Prior to securing money from Google AdSense, it was for free. It was just for fun. In order to get verification for Google AdSense, you need to reach a certain threshold. You need to have 1,000 subscribers and over 4,000 hours of people watching it combined, collectively. Of course, I've surpassed that now, and now it's more than that. But I still want to do it. That's the magic. My heart and my soul, my loyalty to this team, the good times and the bad times. And the Lakers in 2014, 2015, 2016, when they had one of the worst records in the league, I watched every single game. I recapped every single game. And I was pessimistic, but I still treated it like it was I treated it like it was like my baby still, and I would approach it the same way as if they were losing, plummeting, and tanking, and dealing with Kobe's injury, or if right now when the Lakers were the championships this previous year. Once again, I have about 1,400 subscribers. I think about 1,350 right now, so I just rounded up a little bit. Competition. So there is a lot of competition, and I've talked about them a little bit before. The current official Lakers podcast, that's the competition, driving them out, because respectively, they're not very good at their job, and they do not have the resources and the experience that I have. Third party podcast of the competition. I brought up Lakers Film Room. I said Lakers Nation. There's another great podcast called Lakers Legacy Podcast, which is also, of course, a Lakers podcast in competition. Similarly, the Lakers Legacy Podcast was just for fun on its own, and then it picked up a sponsor, right? A sponsor that you do like advertisement reads before a podcast, and they did it so long, and I feel like I'm on my way to that. But I don't want to just, mail it in just for that. But also, another competition are companies like The Ringer. So Bill Simmons, he is a huge Celtics fan. He worked for ESPN forever. He owns this company called The Ringer, which does blogs and podcasts. But the majority of their content is podcasts, and they were actually just bought by Spotify, which does podcast also. And that is huge competition. That's like a mega, can't compete with people like that. That is a large market competition with more than one person behind the project. Unique. The reason why my podcast is unique is because I'm a diehard fan. I'm consistent. I do post Kobe montages, other montages too. I have a room to show off how unique it is. I have a video of my room, the man cave, on my channel that I highly recommend watching because it shows off everything I have. Kobe jerseys, Shaq jerseys, old school Kareem stuff, everything. It's unique because I go deep into contracts and read the stats, analytics, all these advanced stats like PER and plus minus and offensive ratings and stuff like that. And I know the ins and outs. I know when a rumor is a rumor on Twitter, for example, and when it's reality and there's actually some factual basis and not just the word sources. I think it's also unique because of the interactions. I think it's really important that podcasts shift to YouTube, even if they have millions of subscribers, so you can have someone, and a lot of these successful podcasts, like the Conan O'Brien podcast, he has two people backing him up. He has a producer. And the producer's job is to post the podcast and do some outreach for it. And I think doing outreach on YouTube and interacting with your fans is really important because you can't really do that anywhere else, I'd say, for a podcast. But that's what makes it unique. I don't see any Lakers podcasts on YouTube. Even The Ringer, for example, they'll show clips from podcasts of Bill Simmons talking for 10 minutes, not the whole podcast. I'm sorry I mentioned this before. My solo podcast range from maybe 20 to 35 minutes. I have had For example, I talked about how I did a season recap of Alex Caruso. Last year, I did a season recap for, I believe it was Brandon Ingram, and that one was over an hour. So there are some there are some outliers, but that is consistency. So the marketing plan is the outreach. And I need to reach out to more firms and advertisers, just pretty much stay above water in order to be the official Lakers podcast and reach out to the Lakers organization. So people like that head it are, of course, the Bus family. I'm going to show off my analytics. Analytics are very, very important. You can see how long someone's watched the podcast, how long have you retained their attention. So, for example, I may have a podcast that's 30 minutes, and on average, the people stop watching maybe at 20 minutes. The podcast is 20 minutes, they might have stopped watching at 12 minutes. So the retention rate. Other things, of course, analyzing the monetization, how much money you're getting, the gender of the people that watch it, where the sources, where the fans that are watching are from, what countries they're in. Those are very important analytics that if you know, that can really differentiate yourself and make you stand out. Continuity, continuing consistency. I've hit on this several times, but that marketing myself to be an official podcast is really critical because I've seen this. I've seen podcasts go for a year or two and just end. I've seen it from Brian Kaminsky, the Kaminsky brothers, who are on ESPN, who follow the Lakers and they have their own podcast and they just stopped. I've been doing this for years and I'm not going to stop no matter what. The team. There is no team. I am the team. If there's an I in team, that's me. There's an I in win. I want to branch out to form a team, but I need to get there first. I do everything. And there are very, very, very rare, super rare scenarios where I get help from anybody else. And that's how invested I am in this. Traction and milestones. 1,000 subscribers. That was a couple years ago. That was a big milestone for me. This is steadily going on an upward trajectory. Subscribers, total view count, like I said, 800,000 for the channel. That's pretty good. Of course, there's other channels that have millions and millions of subscribers, but they're backed by advertisers and hiring people to help with the Google algorithm and YouTube algorithm and stuff. Google has recognized my channel. In order to be monetized, you need to have a Google AdSense account, and then Google will send you mail certifying that you can get money. That was a milestone. The channel being 10 years old is a milestone. Literally, November 19th, 2010, I started the KB24 Status channel, which is where the Lakeshow's finest is. Once again, it has been on iTunes and other places. But literally just a few days ago, it hit 10 years. That's a huge milestone. In my mind, it is. Started as blog, went to podcast, just montage and other cool videos. That is the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, if you have any questions, let me know. Take care. I hope you liked it. And thank you for a great semester.